Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. I am Daita Sergi, Education Programs Manager with AASHE, and I'll be the moderator today. It is my pleasure to welcome you all. As many of you know, AASHE's mission is to inspire and catalyze higher education to lead the global sustainability transformation. AASHE members represent around 20% of the colleges and universities in the US, as well as institutions in 20 countries, including Canada and Oman. You can learn more about AASHE on our website, www.aashe.org. We provide an expansive collection of online resources, networking tools, and educational events, such as today's webinar, and an annual conference and expo, which will be held this year, October 15 to 18, in San Antonio, Texas. Registration is now available, and prices will increase on July 31st, so please visit conference.aashe.org for more information, and we hope to see you there. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone in the audience is on mute, but please feel free to ask questions or provide comments at any point during the presentation. You can do that by typing your questions or comments in the questions pane in the control panel on your screen. If you have additional questions, please email them to webinars@aashe.org and we will get back to you. At the end of the webinar, you'll have the option to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. We take your suggestions into account when planning for future webinars, so please fill out this post-webinar survey. Please know this webinar is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties or have to leave early, you and others can view the recording later. Presentation materials will be available after the live broadcast as well. At this time, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Brian Shaw, Director of Parking and Transportation Services at Stanford University, Gary Cremens, Project Associate with Transportation Services at Cornell University, and Sarah Hendricks, Senior Research Associate at the University of South Florida. In the interest of time, I will not go over their full bios, but you can find more about the presenters on the AASHE website under this webinar listing. So finally, it is my pleasure to welcome you all. At this time, I'm going to turn to Brian to get us started.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, so we're going to talk about Stanford's TDM situation and why we do what we do and how we do it. And at the end, we'll talk about things we're looking at into the future, which may be applicable for each of your campuses to be considering. So TDM at Stanford's been a long-standing part of our campus and our culture. It goes way back, actually into the 70s when we first started charging people to park. And then over time, we've established new and different programs depending upon the availability of those services, as well as technology, and the need to continue to evolve and innovate our services as we need to continue to reduce the number of people driving to campus. The main reason we do this in the last, I'd say, 15 to 20 years is because of a general use permit that we have that governs the campus's ability to grow and develop. The GUP, as it's colloquially known at Stanford, governs how many beds we can provide, how much square feet we can build, and of course how much parking we can provide to the campus. And a key goal in the GUP is to have no net new peak hour trips coming to and from campus in the morning and the afternoon. So we of course approach that goal very seriously with no free parking, lots of TDM. We'll talk about housing is a key component as well, our Marguerite bus program, as well as emphasizing the use of active modes on campus for people to both commute and to get around campus. When folks come to work at Stanford, they're given this slide to see as part of their orientation. No one today comes to work at Stanford without being oriented first. It's the first thing you do. And part of that orientation is to learn about our transportation programs and services. This has been a critical feature to our success. We've seen around a 50% diversion rate from parking and therefore driving by our new employees who are educated about our programs and services from the very start of their employment. So we talk to them about all the great things that we do, from free transit to the Commute Club, where they get $300 a year for not parking, the assistance we provide, ride matching, etc. We also deal with the built environment at Stanford. So it's not just programs and services, it's the actual infrastructure and design of the campus that on top of that facilitates people using other modes of transportation besides the single occupancy vehicle. So there's plenty of bike parking that is built into the designs of our campus buildings. We have bike lanes and bike paths. We actually have dedicated bike infrastructure to support the bikes. We've instituted new vehicular roundabouts that facilitate the movement of bikes, cars, and other vehicles in a more safe manner. We have moved our parking underground and then have put on top of that parking playing fields or campus academic space to keep the parking away from the core parts of campus. And we provide services like Guaranteed Ride Home as well as car sharing. And we do our work in a very challenging environment, which is the Silicon Valley. There are some good things about attempting to do TDM where we are. At least in the Silicon Valley, TDM is an accepted and understood and appreciated aspect of employment and the regional planning process. We've got a regional transit card known as the Clipper card. We have the Caltrain, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and of course BART. And there are municipal requirements like the GUP and others have similar sorts of constraints that keep TDM on the radar and keep it part of the discussion process. The challenges, though, of doing this work in the Silicon Valley is it's very competitive. We've found our costs to operate our buses going up quite a bit in the recent years because of the competition from the tech companies and others that are running buses more. Commutes are getting longer and more expensive because of real estate costs. Our HOV network is spotty. It's not consistent across the region. And we have a lot of transit agencies. At last count in the 9-county Bay Area, there were over 27 different transit agencies. And we have to work with a good number of them. So that keeps us on our toes. And then there's the ugly, and this is stuff that is of a more recent phenomenon. This is a picture of a completely full Caltrain car during the afternoon rush hour. The tech companies, we all love them. We all love to use Facebook and Google and Apple and LinkedIn and all those great things. But they are employing a lot of people, and it's bringing a challenge to finding bus drivers and even TDM professionals to do the work that we have to do at Stanford. The other challenge we have is the employment growth in the region is outstripping the capacities of our systems. Some trains, like the one you see here, are at over 125% occupancy, which means people are having to stand for a good portion of their trip. Our municipalities love the jobs but don't like housing. Housing costs money, jobs make money, so there's a huge imbalance to where people are living and where they work, which causes there to be more traffic and capacity challenges on our infrastructure. And of course, the geography of the Bay itself represents a huge challenge. Getting across it, there are limited bridges and tunnels, and so those are constrained during rush hours. And the tech companies and others create new ways of doing things, and then they don't pan out, and time and effort is spent doing them, and then they don't work. So we have had to take a different approach in dealing with what I call the apps that are part of the Bay Area experience. So with transit, Caltrain, I mentioned, is at capacity. There are plans to improve it. We recently received federal money to electrify the Caltrain line. That will take around 4+ years to complete. High-speed rail in California is also coming to the Bay Area. That is likely about 8 years away before we see the benefits of that program. Caltrain also suffers from a large number of at-grade crossings that cause conflicts and hurt the service's ability to operate consistently. So eliminating them is a main goal, but will take years and lots of money to do that. I mentioned all the transit agencies already, and the HOV network. We are working to put an HOV lane on Highway 101 through San Mateo County, which is the county that is in between Stanford and San Francisco. That is a main corridor used by many of the private express buses, but without an HOV link. So we are working on that, but that program and that project is about a 5 to 7 year proposition. So this map shows you some of this jobs to housing imbalance and therefore the cost of housing and how it's gone up. And you can see the area in red. That's where Stanford is. And we have some of the most expensive residential real estate in the country located around the university, which means newer employees have to live further and further away to find housing that they can afford, which leads to longer and more difficult commutes and more limited capability of riding transit as part of their commute. We also have big gaps in our bike infrastructure nearby campus, and there's no dedicated funding available to help improve those pieces that need to be fixed. You'll see here over the last 9 to 10 years how our campus population is spread and has begun to concentrate in areas where there still remains relatively good transit access. So the city of San Francisco is that red dot on the upper left side with the Caltrain service. Folks are spreading themselves along the peninsula, and that growing orange blob on the right side of the screen is the East Bay, where the Dumbarton Bridge is located, and where we have started in the last several years express bus service across that bridge, and commuters are beginning to avail themselves to those services, which is a good thing, except the traffic is beginning to slow our buses down. So our commuters are growingly not as well served by transit, and it's difficult to get them to rideshare, but we're working on it. We'll talk more about that. And the folks that drive the most are the ones that live the closest, because the transit system is not facilitating their trips in a reasonable and timely way. And we need to continue to focus on technology, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we've been pretty successful at our efforts in this last GUP that started about 15, 16 years ago. The graph on the bottom left shows how much square feet we have built, and then the lines show how we have reduced our mode split accordingly, which is somewhat unusual. Usually you see growth in square feet and you see growth in trips, and that has not happened at Stanford. The graph on your right bottom shows how our trips have not significantly exceeded the trip count, and through credits we receive for Marguerite bus service and other programs we do, we have not technically gone over the trip gap, the trip goal that we have in the time frame that we have been running through this current GUP. And parking and TDM at Stanford are symbiotic in their relationship. We charge for parking during the commute hours. It is free in the evenings during the week and on weekends, except with some minor event exceptions. We make parking that's cheaper, harder to find, and further away. We raise rates virtually every year so that we're never faced with challenges of when and how to do so. People have to think about parking at least once a year during the annual renew process. We actually pay people to both turn in their parking permits as well as referring others to do so. And that seems to be a pretty good program for us. We do offer occasional parking permits, and we do provide preferred parking for those who car and van pool. Is it working? Arguably, I would say yes. We haven't breached the trip cap, as I mentioned, and we have reduced our mode split. You'll see in the graph on the bottom of the screen how the mode split has gone from the lower to mid 70s all the way down to around 50% over the last 15 years or so. And that's compared to a county mode split that is in the upper 70s. So we have made some significant improvements there. The Go Pass program with Caltrain, which provides free unlimited use of Caltrain, was instituted around 2005, and you can begin to see how that orange spacing on the graph began to grow as a result. And I'm frankly most proud of our bike mode split, which is now over 10%, around 11%, and that has basically doubled during the course of this current GUP. So we are making inroads, but where you see some stagnation is in the carpool area, and we are working on some things I'll talk a little bit about later to help fix that. We also are looking at our graduate student population. They have become a growing group of commuters, and even the ones living on campus, we're looking at them in terms of parking demand and trips. And what we've seen is the ones that at least live on campus are buying cars less and driving them less, which we're happy to see. And their mode split has gone down over the years as well. And so when we looked at a new parking garage associated with some significant new housing we are building on campus, it was originally proposed to build 2,000 spaces for 2,400 beds. And we ran back and did the math and looked at other similar projects that have been built in other areas of California and found that that would provide overcapacity of parking. And so we were able to convince our leadership to reduce the parking being provided from 2,000 spaces to 1,300 spaces as we continue to see less car ownership and use by grad students and the millennials in general. So we did our math, and our TDM programs and our other amenities we have on campus, we're seeing less demand for parking and therefore driving by our graduate students. So we have a basic residential TDM program you see listed here, lots of zip cars and things of that nature, but we are going to enhance that with this new housing. We're going to provide zip car credits for residents. We're going to provide designated space for the shared mobility services, lockers for real-time deliveries, and other types of amenities that are going to hopefully convince the grad students moving into this new housing to leave their cars behind or don't bring them at all and be able to live essentially car-free while they're doing their studies at Stanford. So technology is a big push for us. We see that as the way for us to continue to reduce our mode split and mitigate the impacts of future growth on campus. We'll talk about how we're using data to help us predict our new and needed services, the use of license plate recognition or LPR for managing our parking and how that relates to TDM. And I'll briefly go over some of the interesting ideas that have been brought to us in the TDM space that we are considering or have not considered to do, as it were. So in the last year or so, we have worked with consultants to create a dashboard of our annual commute survey data, which is also allowing us to create a predictive mode share model that we can then use to test different types of scenarios of TDM programs and services and see how that will affect our trip counts and our trip reduction needs as the campus continues to grow and develop. So this is a snapshot of what the dashboard looks like. You can slice and dice the data from the survey in any way you would like, demographically, geographically, by mode, etc. And it helps us display and understand what is going on out there in terms of travel behavior. And this data set is collected once a year through our commute survey, and then it'll be informing this dashboard with the latest data as that survey data is collected and cleaned up. And we're working on that right now from our latest survey we conducted this past spring. The mode share model is very interesting. It combines use of the survey data with existing travel time and network data about the infrastructure in the region, and we can use that to test different uses of mode by future population. So if we were to increase bus service, for example, and lower the travel time and costs, that would have a predicted outcome based upon our survey data that folks would avail themselves to that new mode, and we could then see what kind of trips that reduces. So it's allowing us to test new strategies to decide whether we should start new services or not, and which ones are the most effective at giving us the trip reductions that we will need as we continue to grow and develop into the future. We are in the process now of negotiating our next general use permit with the county, and so we will know within 6 to 9 months, maybe longer, what our next set of goals have to be in that GUP, and we will then use the model I just described to help us figure out the right set of strategies and services to provide to meet those trip reduction goals. One of the things we've already decided on is license plate recognition to manage our parking. Parking at Stanford has no access control, therefore we have no data, except when I send human beings out with clipboards and clickers to count parking utilization. So that data is as useful a week later as week-old bread, meaning not very much. So we are looking to institute license plate recognition for permitting. So your vehicle's license plate becomes your permit, and then be sending our current enforcement personnel around campus in vehicles equipped with cameras to collect more frequent and accurate utilization data about parking. And so this will allow us to have more frequent and close to real-time data about parking use, who's using it, how often, and how many people are abusing the system, so that we can have a better understanding of the use of our parking. And we can eventually tie that into behavioral modification by having people be incentivized to park less, park in areas where we have less demand by pricing it accordingly. So we are very excited about that. We are using New Park as our platform for launching LPR, and we hope to have that underway sometime early next year. The other thing about LPR with TDM that we're excited about is that it will allow us to make better use of a new daily dynamic ride matching system called Scoop. You see the logo there on your screen. Scoop matches people every day, twice a day, to form carpools as they want. And we can then tie the Scoop carpooling data to our parking LPR database to know that driver A carpooled with employee B, and they could then park in one of our existing carpool parking spaces without the bother and challenge of registering as a regular carpool. So we are super excited about this. We think it's going to increase the number of people carpooling, the frequency of which they're doing it, and making it simpler and easier for them to do that. So that is coming. We are using Scoop today to form carpools on the fly, and then this parking benefit that they'll get with LPR, we'll probably launch that sometime next spring, assuming our LPR system is up and running and working well. We're looking at TDM integration platforms. These are, you may have heard of these, called Ride Amigos or Loom, and that provides the ability to market, promote, and do TDM on a more micro level on a more regular basis, and we're evaluating those. We've been trying to figure out what to do with Uber and Lyft. They have these pooling concepts, but for us, the trip is what's the issue, not someone just sharing a ride in a car by themselves. So we've been trying to figure out how to work with them. It's not been easy or simple. Autonomous vehicles, we know they're coming. Driverless shuttles, they're already here to some degree. You see an example of that on the upper picture of your screen. How these fit into what we do and how we can make use of them, we're still figuring it out. They tend to have fairly small capacity, which for us is not enough to make it worthwhile. But hopefully in the future they'll be bigger and able to carry more people more easily, and we're keeping an eye on that. Bike share has been a challenge for us. I have a lot of bikes already on campus, but there are certain populations that would like to see bike share, and now you've got the dockless bike shares, and our concern is having these bikes scattered all over campus in locations we don't want them to be. So we are dipping our toe in the water on bike share, but being very cautious about whether we pursue it. We have electric buses at Stanford. You see an example of one there on your screen. We believe this is the future of public transportation: clean, quiet, efficient. And at Stanford, we are literally putting the sun into our buses. From solar power we both collect on campus, and other solar power we are generating hundreds of miles away in the California desert. We are literally putting the sun into our buses, and we're very excited about that. There's all sorts of apps now that you can do with buses, and we have been evaluating those. I think it's important to have those in terms to optimize your service and understand how to effectively manage your service. But you don't want to create a whole suite of these things that don't work together, which has been one of our challenges. So we're trying to figure out how best to package that all together. But I think it's important to not lose the personal touch. All this tech is great, but you still need the human intelligence and the human empathy and support to encourage people to look at their commute and to give them the encouragement and the capability for them to make a big change from how they commute to work every day. So what's coming? Mobility as a service. We've all heard of software as a service. Well, this is the next sort of concept. It's being trialed in Finland right now. There's a little bit of that currently in the States with programs like Move It and Google Maps. But including everything that's out there as a mobility option, from bike sharing to the transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft and public transit and parking, that is yet to happen. And so we are hoping that does come to pass. It would make it easier for people to make travel choices, but as of yet, you don't really have what I would call a full mass service available today. We've talked about driverless shuttles and Uber and Lyft. Carpool 2.0 is the real-time matching. I think Scoop comes closest to that. I think it's challenging to do real-time matching between individuals because of time. Knowing people want to make trips is one thing, but knowing when and how they want to make them is another. And I think Scoop has at least eliminated the time factor by pooling the trips and batch matching them twice a day. And that might be the closest we ever get to really real-time ride matching that works well. There's all kinds of crazy devices now to move people around. This thing you see on the screen is called an Irby. You can look it up and Google it. There's all sorts of devices we've been seeing coming our way to help people negotiate that last or first mile to transit. And they're getting better and better, have better ranges, safer, more easier to use. And so we'll see where this all turns out. But they haven't really gotten those cheaper. They're still relatively pricey. So we'll see if they can get those costs down to make it more available to everyone. So we are going to continue to work on our challenges of managing our peak hour trips. We are beginning to get into the public policy space and working with Caltrain and our MPO and our counties on large initiatives to improve the transportation infrastructure in the Bay Area. There are many projects, I mentioned a few, and there are others that we're beginning to realize that with them, we can do a great deal of improvement to our efforts, but without them, we'll be challenged. So we continue to work into that space. Carpooling for us, we believe, also is a major area for growth and opportunity, as well as van pools. We recently made van pooling at Stanford free. There is no van pool fares anymore, and therefore we have seen literally a tripling of the number of van pool groups coming to campus every day. So we're very excited about that. So that's it for me. We're going to turn it over, I believe, next to Sarah.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Data. I'm Sarah Hendricks, and I will share some information about the experience of the University of South Florida in Tampa in our pursuit of a climate-neutral university campus. We serve over 42,000 students at the Tampa campus, and I've worked at USF for 25 years, so I've seen firsthand the many changes that have taken place. I'd like to talk about two main emphases. One is USF's campus master planning efforts. It received an Award of Excellence last fall at the Hillsborough County Planning Commission's annual Planning and Design Awards event. And then secondly, I'd like to talk about our wider community engagement efforts with local and state government partners. So USF does not have a TDM coordinator on their staff. However, USF does benefit from its long-standing membership in the New North Transportation Alliance. This is a transportation management initiative that helps public and private sector representatives in the area work together to address traffic congestion and air quality. NNTA is staffed by myself and my colleague Julie Bond, and it's also supported with sponsorship from the Florida Department of Transportation, as well as help from the larger transportation demand management team at the Center for Urban Transportation Research. So NNTA promotes transportation options at USF in addition to surrounding employers. We also provide the support to conducting the commute mode survey for USF, and we've used the survey to not only collect needed commute mode share data, but other data to help our campus master planning effort and any specific questions that the Parking and Transportation Services Department has. So we ask about how frequently people use their primary commute mode, as well as questions related to their awareness of the different transportation services provided on campus, and also if they've ever tried the services. So the importance of a wider community engagement effort has become more apparent over the years. USF has accomplished much of the low-hanging fruit with regard to transportation services and programs and incentives. The campus master plan is filling in the gaps of the needed infrastructure to help people walk, bike, and take public transit. Our STARS rating, which you can see on the lower left, shows we're doing a good job supporting sustainable transportation. We're also doing okay with the campus fleet. We have some new initiatives underway to do even better there. What's really the challenge for USF is to move the needle on commute mode shift. I think an important part of that depends on what happens outside the campus. But let me first talk about what's happening within the campus. So the upper right of your screen shows Florida, and for those of you unfamiliar with USF, we're in the Tampa area, which is on the west coast of Florida, about an hour's drive from the Gulf of Mexico. So in the late 1950s, the University of South Florida was started as a small suburban university. There was nothing out in that neck of the woods in Hillsborough County, and the school was envisioned as a commuter school. And as such, the campus was designed to serve cars with large parking lots and buildings spaced far apart. But over the decades, Florida has seen accelerated population growth, and it became clear to school leaders that that original vision for the campus was not supporting the needs of the students. And so over time, the university has evolved its visioning, planning, and policy setting, and that has culminated in our president signing the American College and University President's Climate Commitment in 2008. So 7 years after signing the climate commitment, USF completed its 2015 campus master plan update. So by Florida state law, public universities are required to have campus master plans updated every 5 years, and one of the required elements is transportation. So a lot of things are contained in the campus master plan, including the addition of 1,000 additional beds, which are going to be coming online this fall, located on the north side of the campus, in addition to a full-service grocery store within the campus with bike racks near the entrance. The plan also recognizes, as you can see on the screen, the need to complete the bike lane network as part of the street system within the campus. And so the dark green lines show the existing bike lanes. We have many gaps. The light green shows the proposed bike lanes and where they need to be filled in. And there are places where we have a bike lane on one side of the street and not on the other, and that can create problems. So we are trying to rectify that. There's been also a sustained effort to provide more bike parking throughout the campus. There was a map that was devised that showed the locations and posted on the USF website. The NNTA developed an employee Veloport bike locker pilot program. Bicyclists on the campus are eligible to use the Emergency Ride Home program due to inclement weather. The Emergency Ride Home program is provided by our Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority. And then we also have a lot of different special events. We have the annual Bulls Walk and Bike Week to promote safety. The NNTA provides the technical support to a regional coalition called the Bike Walk Tampa Bay, and that coalition hosted league cycling instructor seminars of the League of American Bicyclists to train trainers to bike safely. Last fall, culminating with all these efforts, the League of American Bicyclists designated the USF Tampa campus as a bicycle-friendly university silver rating. So we have something known as the Student Green Energy Fund, and this was established for improving the use of renewable energy technologies to lower our campus's greenhouse gas emissions and our energy costs. And the student body elected to charge itself $1 per credit hour to fund this fee. And one of the many programs that has come out of that is the USF Shareable Bike Share program. It started a couple years ago, and until last semester it was free. And at that time, membership had topped over 5,000 with an average of 12.4 rides per bike per day. The NNTA also provided 150 U-bike racks to be installed on campus for the Shareable program. We also provided a Bike Smart safety quiz for students as they signed up for the Shareable program. So this bike share program has been very successful. It had been assigned to our USF Rec Center to manage, but the Rec Center did not have the staff or the means to maintain the program, and that included fixing the bicycles that were getting used a lot more than anticipated. And so the university is now in negotiations with Coast Bike Share to rent the shareable bikes and take over the management of the program, and that includes an additional 200 bikes that will be available for use. And the transitioning program will also eventually allow bicycles to be ridden off campus within a designated zone. So here's another map from our campus master plan. The USF Tampa campus is a super block. It measures 1.5 miles in length by 1 mile in width, and the buildings are spread out within the campus. And so people will drive their cars from building to building, which is something that we are trying to discourage by providing more amenities within the campus, including a network of sidewalks that you can see on the screen. And in addition to developing a sidewalk network that's more complete, our facilities management department implemented a best practices in urban tree canopy management, and as a result, the Arbor Foundation designated the USF Tampa campus as a Tree Campus USA, and USF planted in the past 5 years over 2,500 trees, which really transformed the campus. And one of the ulterior motives to it was to make the campus more pleasant to walk on instead of driving. We have a very hot sun in the summer. Another key thing too was instituting a universal speed limit of 25 miles per hour on campus. So that brings us to USF parking. So we are a suburban campus, and we have a relatively weak regional public transit system, and so parking is still central to transportation efforts. The Tampa Bay area does not have a light rail system yet. So USF Parking and Transportation Services is responsible for the operation and the maintenance of all the parking facilities on campus. They're responsible for operating 4 parking garages, including paying down the debt service on the construction of those garages. Parking and Transportation Services is an auxiliary unit of the campus, so it has to operate within the means of its own budget. And so PAT's revenue from the sale of parking permits pays for the operation of the lots and the garages. And the map here shows the lots, the multicolor in green, yellow, orange, and red, the degree of utilization of those parking lots. So the goal of the campus master plan is to eventually move the parking facilities away from the core of the campus and toward the outer areas of the campus so that people park once and then use the Bull Runner or bike or walk to their destination. So the goal is to create a more walkable core of the campus that has less car traffic. And then in addition, these parking lots, many of them will be replaced over time with future buildings and lab space. Also, our Student Green Energy Fund has approved a project to install an additional 10 electric vehicle parking stations in the garages. So we also have the USF Bull Runner. This is an internal campus circulator. It was started in 1999 by Parking and Transportation Services. So with the beginning of the Bull Runner, that really marked the beginning of a serious look beyond the campus boundaries to figure out what more can be done to serve the transportation needs of the campus community, particularly for commuting. So now the Bull Runner over the years has established 6 routes, 3 of which go off campus, serving housing to the north, west, and south of the campus. And the most heavily used route serves over 200,000 riders during the fall semester. And that's the route that goes off campus to the west, also connects to our Hart Regional Transit Transfer Center. So the student transportation access fee is $3 per credit hour, and it supports the Bull Runner and other expenses of parking and transportation services. So The Bull Runner also has an automated vehicle locator known as the Bull Tracker. And in addition to that, the Student Green Energy Fund started the creation of the USF Maps app. It's a mobile trip planner that enables people to navigate internally through the campus to find particular buildings, to plan their routes to buildings, say, that avoid stairs, find bike parking, bike fix stations, and many other layers of transportation information that is put at your fingertips by the mobile app. It includes the location of the electric car charging stations, car share vehicles, and other information. So in addition to the Bull Runner, we also have our Hillsborough Area Regional Transit, HART. That is our bus service in this area. It operates 5 bus routes directly through and along the edge of USF's Tampa campus and operates the nearby University Area Transit Transfer Center. At that center, 12 fixed routes meet, and these routes include HART's Metro Rapid service. It's a limited stop BRT operating to downtown Tampa. HART also connects the USF Tampa campus to downtown and the airport and other county destinations, as well as Pinellas County to the west and Pasco County to the north. HART presently is completing a comprehensive operations analysis and doing a lot of community outreach to update its plan. Presently, our transportation, our transit service is suffering from a lack of funds, so they're going to be cutting back some of that service. So USF provides a U-Pass, which is free to students and 50 cents for employees. So in addition to the transit service, USF offers something known as ZimRide, which is USF's social network for ride matching. We have about 3,800 cumulative users to date. We also have a car sharing program that's currently managed by Enterprise. We have 4 cars on campus. And then through our Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority, USF commuters are also eligible for van pools. And also our car share membership is about 410 presently. So one of our commute mode survey questions asked how far away commuters live from campus, and we asked that of students, staff, and faculty. And the employees, the staff and faculty, typically about 50% of them live between 4 and 20 miles away from campus. The students, which is what this graph is on your screen, what we find is many more students, a higher percentage of students rather than employees, live closer to campus, within about 1 to 3 miles from the campus. So that makes them potential candidates for walking, bicycling, and using public transit. So this is a dot density map that shows the residential locations within 3 and 5 miles of the campus. So while walking within the campus is relatively easy, despite that we have very hot summers and a rainy season in the summer as well, the campus also is surrounded on 3 sides by multi-lane highways, and that makes it uncomfortable at best and unsafe at worst to walk to and from the campus. So the good news is that there's a lot going on just outside the campus presently, and USF is reaching out to its municipal partners to get involved in the discussions and the planning. The county has rezoned areas adjacent to the campus to increase residential housing densities to the north, and USF, in addition to being a member of the New North Transportation Alliance, is also a partner in a community revitalization organization known as Innovation Place. That was started as an effort to beautify the street gateways upon one's approach to the campus, and the initiative quickly expanded to job creation efforts as well as transportation studies to serve the area. So presently, USF has participated in the discussions with the county for a community plan for this area directly north of the campus, and the goal is the development of policy alternatives, and an infrastructure financing plan. So the photo on the left is 42nd Street. That's a main residential street for student off-campus housing and staff housing. The Bull Runner serves this area, but you can see why someone would not want to walk or bicycle to campus or walk to the bus stop for that matter. And so hopefully that community plan will begin to address the drainage problems north of the campus to make it easier to walk, bicycle, and use public transit. So community engagement is a complicated process for USF. This is because there are many partners. The map on the left shows the immediate area surrounding the USF campus. The green is the northernmost part of incorporated city of Tampa. USF is officially part of the city, and the super block of the campus is what joins the south part of the city to the northernmost city community that's known as New Tampa. The beige color on the map is unincorporated Hillsborough County, which is less well served by public transit. And then the blue is the incorporated city of Temple Terrace, which is a suburban residential community that is immediately east to the USF Tampa campus. So the map on the right shows the city of Temple Terrace. Temple Terrace is a citywide multimodal transportation district. This is a statewide designation in which the city has developed a plan to prioritize pedestrian transportation over automobile transportation. Doing so, designating this area as a multimodal transportation district, it gives Temple Terrace more leeway regarding maintaining their roadway level of service standards. And the city and USF have been working together to figure out ways to connect the USF Tampa campus better with the city of Temple Terrace. For example, the city has proposed an off-road shared use path to strengthen transportation connections between Temple Terrace and USF. So on the other side of the USF Tampa campus is a community known as the University Area. Decades ago, it held a large concentration of apartments rented by students, and over the years, as the housing stock aged, it became one of the lowest income areas in the county. So for the past several years, there's been concerted effort by the county to support redevelopment in the area, including the creation of the University Area Community Plan. It emphasizes pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and transit service. It also contains the University Area Transit Center that is a hub where 12 HART routes meet, and there's a stop for the Bull Runner. USF researchers have been involved in a brownfields redevelopment effort in the university area, and the community is the focus of bicycle and pedestrian safety programs by the Bike Walk Tampa Bay Coalition. USF Facilities Management has also been working with the county to include sidewalks along the west side of the campus to serve new apartment complexes that are being built along that part. So because of expanding growth to the north of USF, there's a major county road known as Bruce B. Downs Boulevard is being widened presently. Bruce B. Downs Boulevard is the only direct route to New Tampa and to Pasco County to the north. So it generates a lot of traffic, and a problem that we've seen was that during this construction there was no provision for pedestrians and bicyclists in the maintenance of traffic plan for the construction, and it made this area really dangerous for travelers who were bicycling and walking. And so we worked with the county to put a better maintenance of traffic plan in place to serve bicyclists, pedestrians, and making sure the throughway was ADA accessible. The Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization also is heading up a Vision Zero effort to reduce pedestrian and bicycle fatalities in the area, and their strategic plan focuses on actions regarding enforcement, engineering, encouragement, and education, and our Bike Walk Tampa Bay is a key partner in that. So we were able to get included in their engineering focus, included the attention to this maintenance of traffic planning whenever there's a roadway resurfacing or reconstruction. So this is a county road. It's governed by a state design manual known as the Florida Green Book. And the Florida Department of Transportation is presently rewriting all their manuals and handbooks to implement a new complete streets policy that will govern all state roads. And eventually the Green Book will also be updated, and we will be partnering to encourage language changes in the Green Book that require maintaining a safe, connected, and continuous path for pedestrians and bicyclists. So to summarize, USF has recognized the need to put in place the physical infrastructure needed to allow people to use more sustainable transportation modes on campus, and this has been directed through successive iterations of their campus master plan updates. The USF administration also recognizes the importance of sustainable transportation programs, services, and incentives. These include the Bull Runner, our car share program, our bike share program, as well as the subsidized HART U-Pass program. So our STARS rating shows that we provide the supportive transportation services and programs, and that's been our low-hanging fruit. The harder part is shifting campus commuters to more sustainable modes, and we have seen some success with improving mode share by students. The student success is partly because of on-campus changes that have been directed by the master plan, such as the on-campus dormitories and the services like the grocery store. But the larger story is changes that are taking place off campus, and USF's recognition that they need to be part of the dialogue and the planning with their municipal neighbors. And they're supported in this effort through the New North Transportation Alliance. So the off-campus changes include densification of the neighborhoods to the north, more new housing that's closer to campus, the complete streets efforts to make adjacent streets safer and more inviting for pedestrians and bicyclists. Also, more sustainable mode share gains is really going to depend on longer term improvements to our regional public transit system. And with that, I end my presentation. Thanks. And I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Great presentation. You too, Brian. First off, thank you very much for inviting Cornell University to this webinar here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. So I thought this was a great title. Is moving the needle. Sometimes it's incremental. Sometimes there's some big shifts. Once again, just want to give a really big thank you to not just AASHE for inviting us, but people like Brian Shaw, who has been a great advocate for transportation demand management. I'm going to use a lot of acronyms probably at times, but for those on this webinar, TDM is a transportation demand management. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm anti-parking, but I don't greenwash people. I talk more about the financial, depending on the audience. I'll talk about the financial side, so a surface slot space. I keep it kind of casual and consistent. It's $5,000 to $8,000 a space, or a cookie cutter garage is $15,000 to $20,000 a space. I just read recently over in LA there was a kind of a unique parking structure that was $82,000 a space. Right on our campus, we have a parking structure that's $75,000 per space. Or I might change it, depending on the audience, talking about the 3 E's. Some I can't actually do anything about. 3 E's being education, enforcement, and engineering. As we all know, engineering costs money. One thing that is in my control a little bit is actually that education piece. And with that is part of my job, I think, is just trying to be fun, get active engagement, and build sincere relationships, and not expect a return on investment. That's pretty much been my key, I think, with trying to make, whether it be an incremental move or not, is trying to make sure I continue to build relationships both on campus and off campus. Fortunately, we don't at Transportate in Ithaca, and I'll show you here on the map, we don't have the challenges that Brian might have or Sarah might have. We're a little smaller community, but we do have a campus, a fairly large, well, a new campus is being built called Cornell Tech over there in New York City. This is just a little joke, even though it kind of does transportation does in there a little bit. but I believe it should be included in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I would like to kind of throw that in there. So one thing that and I don't want to do a broad stroke, but I'm going to, and that is we all try to get stuff done fast, and sometimes the best way to do that is not always the best way to do that. It's trying to get it done all by yourself. However, one thing that I found to have long-lasting stuff that lasts beyond you is having that collaboration. And if you want to go, as you see in that proverb, if you want to do it, do it together. So what the heck is this to have to do with Cornell transportation? My wife and I put on a hike. It's called First Day Hike. Had 12 people. I asked New York State Parks, hey, do you mind if I help promote this? They said, yeah, why not? So, and that was 2012, and now we are the largest First Day Hike that's across the country. So once again, what does this have to do with Cornell transportation? It's building relationships. Now New York State Parks does a lot of active transportation in collaborating with the Bike to Work Day. We have something that we collaborate with as a run or a walk to work day, stuff like that. So it's building those relationships without expecting a return on investment. So
Gary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you click on the white arrow on the orange button, because for some reason the go-to meeting control panel is showing and it's taking space.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for letting me know that here. One sec here. Let me get out of this. Thank you. Go back to my slide.
Thank you. Perfect.
Oh, no. Thanks for letting me know. So I'm from Chicago, so when I thought New York, I always think of New York City. But Ithaca is in the Finger Lakes region, kind of in the middle of New York. That's where a lot of the work that I do is. We also have a connection to New York City. We have 8 kind of mini campuses. We have a medical college there, and as I mentioned, I would Google Cornell Tech. A brand new tech campus is being built on Roosevelt Island. What does that mean for us? We do 7 days a week, 3 times a day, trips from Ithaca to New York City. So we're constantly moving people back and forth from New York to Ithaca. There's also great campus over in Geneva. I'm not going to go through them all because Stanford has the same thing. A lot of major universities have little satellites throughout the area. So who the heck is Gary Cremains? I try to build relationships. Not all of these pictures that you see here, I've had a return on investment. So the woman that you see down there at the bottom with the selfie works for Cornell Wellness. We started Run Walk before I was even doing transportation demand management, and teamed up with the Roadrunners Club of America. And we started off with 4 people to get people to walk that day. And this past year, we had 360. So there's just a lot of different ways, and you just don't give up on building on those relationships. The 3 E's, I think, are very important. That's, once again, how I started in the beginning, which is education, engineering, and enforcement. We'll work with our local campus police, and someone below. I mean, of course, love roundabouts, but we don't have any of those on campus. But someone blows a stop sign, we'll have Cornell police pull over the cyclist, and then just give them some education. They're not necessarily receiving a ticket, but from that safety aspect, we do PSAs along all 9 radio stations. And what's been more of a topic is the quadruple bottom line. Some of us have heard people, profit, planet. And then the 4th, Cornell started to use, which is purpose. So here's an example of educating people. This is our local mayor. We did a series of events called the Tompkins County Commuter Challenge. It was a series of TDM events. One I was actually shocked I thought would be a home run, which was telecommuting or remote working. We had human resources collaborate. We had training for supervisors on when an employee asks you, how do you manage that conversation? Training for employees on how to manage that conversation, and then tech that saves a trip. It was not well received, even though I think that is one of the trends for TDM. Here, this was so we did a presentation. Mayor Meyer came in. We had both sides of the aisle. We had the local assemblywoman and a transportation liaison from Congressman Reed's office. So you could see that this was not just trying to greenwash people. And a lot of people don't know all the acronyms, TMA, NPO, all that stuff. So we did another type of outreach to explain people where those federal dollars come in. This is where moving the needle, I think, does happen, where people are educated more on how their money is being spent. So this is our local NPO talking to an audience. Michael Manville is now over at UCLA, but as Brian had mentioned before, housing, big deal. It's a huge deal. So here in Ithaca, very expensive to live. On the outskirts, not so expensive. So therefore, more people use a single occupancy an SOV to get to work. Michael Manville kind of explains that how housing plays an important role with transportation management. Then I was charged by my director to make a parking garage exciting. That was a little bit odd. Hopefully my boss, well, if she is listening, she's listening. But I was like, okay, let me make this happen. So LinkedIn was great. I knew somebody from Tesla all of a sudden and invited other dealers and had decision makers drive a Tesla. So they saw the self-driving feature, as Brian mentioned. Like, when seeing is believing, you can see it on YouTube and all that. But when you take the hands off the wheel and you're going down at night down a road with no line in the middle and it misses a pothole because all the cameras see it, it's pretty cool. But we let decision makers kind of see electrical vehicles aren't really part of TDM, but once again, this is building relationships, explaining to decision makers the importance of transportation demand management. So let me change gears a little bit based on people ask me what am I going to present. Some people wanted me to talk a little bit about social media. That's a whole thing in of itself, so I'm just going to lightly touch base on that. But a lot of it has to do with engagement, not necessarily social media. It's engaging your audience. Some people belong to this group, so this is a little self-plug, but it's a secret Facebook group on Facebook that has about 300 TDM professionals that are sharing universal type content. But if you do want to play in that game of social media, as I mentioned, I'm from Chicago, so I'm supposed to hate the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm supposed to hate the New York Yankees. I'm supposed to hate the Southsiders over there in Chicago. But all three of these players did a great job. Ozzie Smith kept everything fun and casual. Derek Jeter, I couldn't hate Derek Jeter. He produced and recognized others. And Harold Baines over there, now all these three people are retired, but Harold Baines, over 20 years in the majors, he was always looking at data and re-evaluating to keep that longevity. But this right here takes me 90 minutes every single day. It's not just posting, it's researching what's going on at the university, what's going on inside the county, what's going on in transportation, so I can be timely with what's going on. And also leveraging other people's labor as well, because people just don't want to hear about road closures and, hey, make sure you bike to work or make sure you bike to school and shoving stuff down the throat. You want to have engaging type content. 70%, that's how I benchmarked it. 70% is sharing useful information. 20% is recognizing others, and that 10% is actually doing your own little self-promotion. Because last thing you want, whether it be social media or tabling, is you don't want this as an audience. You want to make sure that you are always keeping that fun and engaging. Once again, to do that is leveraging relationships, but not doing that doing that in a sincere way without always looking for a return on investment. Just it was yesterday. We have a lot of gorges up through campus, and unfortunately, people do die. We had a new large group of new students that came in that aren't used to the area. Thankfully, we have a PSA that was put together a while ago about gorge safety, and just shared it yesterday, and was then shared 117 times across New York State and campus. Why? Because I already have that engaged audience. If I did not do that, that word may have not have gotten out there. So that's why, and let me go on to the next slide here. So here's a quick snapshot. 1% on the social media side would be great. As you see here, we're way past that. This is on Cornell Transportation Services page. And I don't care about likes. People can like the page, that's fine. It's about reach. So let me dial it back a little bit. Reach means it goes on your timeline. So you could be going to bed, you could be on your computer, you know, doing the scroll button. That means it hit your eyes, but you didn't do anything with it. So an engagement means you touched that post, you did something interactive with that post. So that is an actual good, 1% would be a great number. The same thing when people run listservs. If you are running a 1 or 2% click-through rate on your listserv, you're doing a decent job. Here's a quick snapshot on how to leverage that labor. So, because I recognize a bunch of people during a reunion weekend, as you see, I was successful for engagement in some, and some not so successful. So I'm always measuring that data. This I actually tapered back a lot, because once again, timeliness. Unfortunately, so you do planning for bike to work. We had a great number. We had over 100 people that never rode their bike to work actually bike on that day. But unfortunately, we were missing a student, and I couldn't really do a lot of celebration afterwards. Some other people did. That's where you see these weird inflated numbers. These are other partners. We have 13 stations across the county that were super excited, and then we're sharing that other photos that were posted and all that. However, I tapered ours because of the lost student who unfortunately was found dead. Why I bring that up, you want to make sure that, you know, you just don't go out there and do social media. There's a lot more behind it besides just posting. So I was charged by the end of 2016 for us to have a social media presence. Hopefully, if Penny's on the line from UCLA Transportation, hopefully I'm a little competitive, so hopefully that we're at U of likes, but I'm more interested in engagement. As you see, we actually beat Cornell itself in engagement for this particular week. This is a snapshot of Cornell's campus to campus. As you see here, we're right around 10%, which is an actual good number, and that's sharing useful type content and also interesting facts. It could be about Ithaca and the relationship to New York City. This is a snapshot for Giving Day, working with Alumni Affairs and Development. Some stuff did great, some stuff did not so well. So I'm going back to kind of see what's happening. Am I flooding people's feeds? Are people unliking the page? Thankfully, we don't receive a lot of unlikes, but that's something that I'm always tracking. For luxury buses, this is our campus to campus. We're one in the area, but nationally, we're ranked 3rd. Cornell just up there for me to have a little benchmark there. You can't be dependent on one tool. That's where it's moving this needle. An example would be make sure you survey, see what stuff's happening. We between the PSAs, digital signs, tabling, all of those things, a majority of our results came from the electronic end. And we had a 61% increase of people that participated in Bike to Work. But one thing you can't measure is that relationship part. And that is, you'll be able to see this on our Facebook page. as well. This was a Facebook Live event. I did a wayfinding type thing to where we close down the streets. It's a long story, but we close down the streets and we do tabling. It's $20 for a table, but there's literally hundreds of tables everywhere. So before the event, I said, hey, this is where we're at. We're near DeWitt Park. We hit about 7,000 people as far as the people that saw us on their timeline, and 1.2, so just over 1,000 people actually viewed the video and then came to see what we were all about. Once again, collaboration, and this is where it's educating people. So we have two different schools. And I did training with them to talk about transportation to demand management. And this was a great little table event. They took it upon themselves. This was for a bike to work. They dressed up as a cow. This may not work in Tampa. This was hot for her. That was in the cow costume. But we were able to get great engagement afterwards. And lastly, what I'd like to kind of charge people with, as baby boomers are retiring, Brian mentioned about technology. So there's the LPRN. There's also vehicles that do heat signatures, so you can tell how many people are in the car. I was just on the Mass Turnpike this past October. It's all self-service now. They just bill you. So as TDM and transportation starts to catch up with technology, I really challenge you to really look at how your org chart is structured. And with that being said, I think my time is up, and I'll hand it back on over and stop sharing. So
thank you so much, Gary, Brian, and Sarah. We have lots of questions, so I'll make sure to just to try to get through all of them in the 20 minutes or so we have left. And I'll also like to remind all the attendees that they can submit questions via the questions pane on the GoToWebinar control panel. So I'll start with Sarah first. Does USF have a sidewalk with standard in place to help ease conflicts with shared use, bikes, pedestrians, carts, etc.?
So a sidewalk standard, I believe we do not have any particular standard. I would say that the width of the sidewalks vary depending upon the amount of pedestrian traffic in certain areas of the campus. But there's been perennial conversations going on with regard to allocating the space of the sidewalks and the shared use paths, perhaps to separate the bicyclists from the pedestrians. We also have a lot of golf carts that our surveys show are very irritating to pedestrians. The golf carts are used by staff and campus maintenance people, the landscaping people, and so that's a good question with regard to standardizing the width of the sidewalks and providing perhaps some sort of criteria as to how to allocate that space and to guide what would be the best width for different areas. Yeah, we also have a lot of skateboarders as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question for you. Regarding the USF bike share program, how did you overcome the liability concern and get your risk management team on board?
So I believe there was a when you sign up as a member, there was a waiver that you sign, but I think also part of that was a risk management plan that included that the people could only ride the shareable bikes within the campus, the confines of the campus. So I think that the campus planners were willing to work with the program, considering that it's a very popular program that's growing across the United States, and they were interested in trying it. So we really didn't have a lot of pushback with regard to the liability effort.
Thank you. For Gary, can you show us again the private TDM Facebook group that you told them about? I think this is what you're actually going to right now.
Yeah, so you can see my screen, I take it?
Yes, we do see your screen.
All right, yeah, so this is just so what I do is I vet people to make sure that I go on usually on LinkedIn just to kind of see, make sure they are involved, and then people share universal type content. We actually did promote this event here. Um, so this was a great thing that was public domain. I did a This Day in History for the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act, and then how that then, you know, so there's just that type of content that doesn't have to be specific for Cornell transportation, but other people can use as well. And I try to make sure that it's public domain or it's shareable content.
Thank you very much. Now, going back to your presentation, why was the teleworking program not well received?
Because we have a policy at Cornell, and I was warned by the person who wrote the policy that this is not going to be as well received. So I said, "Oh, we'll be all right." You know, I got a little bit too ahead of myself. So, but I collaborated with Human Resources and our Cornell Information Technology group, so people knew what tools were available for them to work from home, and it really, and I think this is an assumption on my end, is that say there's two people that are doing a job. How do you measure the metrics of how well I'm doing it, how well somebody else is doing it? One would be an example, our appeals department for people who appeal a parking ticket. That's an easy metric. You can do that from the house. That you processed it so many appeals, but it's coming up with some type of metric to make that happen. And when I was kind of shocked when I went to Google, I was talking to Lucy Tice on over there and thinking that, hey, I was just doing a visit there, which was kind of cool, and I thought, hey, they're all about working from home, and no, it's about that collaboration. We want more collaboration, that face-to-face type stuff. So it was I don't have a direct answer. I still went through with it, and it was the most people that was the biggest month that I had people sign up for Zimride. So that was a success for that awareness, but it just wasn't well received by the actual departments.
Thank you, Gary. I'll turn to Brian now. What is the name of the dashboard software? It looks cool.
It's a proprietary system that was developed by our consultant, so it's really not something you can buy. It's something you have to have developed with, our consultants or whoever. But it's built off the fact that we have literally decades of commute survey data that helps to inform the dashboard. You have to have that survey data and consistency in how you're collecting that data to have the dashboard function. So it's not something you can just go buy, because you've had to develop the data set arguably for years to be able to do it. So if you aren't already doing annual commute surveys, you need to start, because there's really no better way that I've seen to help understand what you're doing, how it's working, what isn't working, and what adjustments you may need to make, and then how to see how any new initiatives or changes you may have made, how are they impacting your overall commute mode and behavior that you're trying to impact. So it's something I like to show people because it's aspirational, but it's not something you can just go and buy and use. It's a much more involved initiative.
Thank you, Brian. How did you get 20,000 responses to survey? What share is that of total Stanford student, staff, and faculty?
We actually are closer to 30,000 respondents, and that includes the hospital enterprise as well as the university population. All in, it's a group of about 90,000 people between all the different entities that we survey. It's mostly staff. Our students represent only about 9,000 of that total population. So it's mostly staff. It's also affiliates, so our contract employees, visiting folks and things like that. So it's a pretty comprehensive group. And you basically have to entice them, incentivize them to do it. Now, we've been doing the survey for so long that it's become a normal thing that we do, so people are expecting it. And so when it comes around, they know to do it, but we have to incentivize it for it to really work.
Thank you. Given all the different programs you offer, do you believe graduating students expect to have similar options when they get hired? Are employers meeting those expectations?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So, given all the different programs you offer, do you believe students who graduate expect to have similar options when they get hired, and are employers meeting those expectations?
Yeah, I mean, in the Bay Area, TDM, as I mentioned, has become an accepted and almost expected aspect of work. So Stanford grads, having seen what we do on campus and where they can go work in the Bay Area, they expect there to be transit passes and shuttles and carpools and all that good stuff. Now, whether they expect it when they go away from the Bay Area, I would imagine they bring that with them. But my experience in my career over 20 years shows that California has a lot more acceptance and understanding of TDM, but you're beginning to see more of it across the country, and the universities are really where you're seeing it take hold in these areas that traditionally hadn't really been, I would say, TDM strongholds. So, you know, that's my perception of it. And I may have it clouded a little bit by my Bay Area experience, but that's how I'm looking at that question.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to, Brian, I can't echo that more. So when I was on the West Coast, it is a completely different environment, culturally wise. That's going to take a while, in my opinion, for those behavioral type changes to hit the East Coast. So it's making dents here, but major changes are going to take a while here on the East Coast. That's just an opinion of mine.
Thank you. I'll address two questions to all three of you. So we'll start with Sarah, then go to Gary, and then to Brian. How do you fund your TDM program? Grants, fees, operating revenue? Sarah?
Okay, so the TDM program, the TDM services and technical support that benefits University of South Florida is through the New North Transportation Alliance, which is a grant. It's a grant from the Florida Department of Transportation. I'm hearing some. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's a grant from the Florida Department of Transportation. And then Parking and Transportation Services has its own funding, which comes primarily from a student transportation access fee that's $3 per credit hour. And then they also sell parking permits, of which is about $47,000 permits sold annually. So that's a very large chunk of funds as well. Those are the primary sources of income. And then I would also suggest that our Student Green Energy Fund has really been stepping up to the plate. We've got, a lot of those projects are meant to provide visibility to sustainability. For example, recently a Student Green Energy funded project purchased an electric bus, a 100% electric bus for parking and transportation services. We also have another project underway that has been funded through the Student Green Energy Fund to convert cooking oils to biodiesel that can be used by the Bull Runner as well. So there's a few different sources of revenue.
So on my end, if we're talking specifically about TDM, it would be from Cornell Transportation Services, which comes from the university. But there's other sources that happen as well. There's a student organization that launched a bike share this past April. That they're the major funder of it, and we played a small role in that. So that's a 15-month pilot called Big Red Bikes, and Zaxter is the third party of that, kind of similar to what Sarah was saying as far as when she was talking about risk management. That was one of our biggest issues. The other item is I have a small budget. That the Commuter Challenge, I entered into International Parking Institute for a marketing award because we're way under the $2,500, and a lot of that is asking for the order. So I'll go to our local hospital or local people that would like a local bike shop, and I'll ask for sponsorship, and I'll ask for money because our budget is fairly low. We just restarted our TDM program in the latter part of 2014 into early part of into 2015. It's always been in existence as far as free bus passes for employees, but the strong marketing end hasn't happened until the past couple of years.
Brian?
We're focused primarily on our employees. Our students live on campus. For the most part, 95% of our undergrads live on campus, and we're around 55 to 60% of our graduate students. We are building net 2,000 new beds for our grad students so that they can also have more of them live on campus. And we have found that's the best way to eliminate commute trips related to our student population. We do believe that we need to start incentivizing that from a parking standpoint, and that's the residential TDM I talked about. But our employees is the primary focus of our TDM efforts, and will remain that way because they're the ones that live off campus, that live further and further away, and whose commutes are becoming more and more challenged every day as the Bay Area is going through a boom period, and our infrastructure has not had any significant improvements or enhancements to it in decades. So we continue to focus on them because they're the ones commuting during the peak hours at the most congested times, and is where the GUP I mentioned has its primary goal associated with them. So we're, it's not, I wouldn't say it's because it's the right thing to do and that's what everybody should be doing, but it's the right set of priorities and policies and investments for Stanford to do, given our setting, our population's behavior, and really our culture. Stanford's land is owned by the university in perpetuity and is designated to be used for academic and educational purposes, which is why we focus our housing on our land, on our students and faculty, and we don't typically house many of our employees. And so there's some other kind of historical and arguably legal tenets that limit what we can do with our space as well. So what I hope folks can do with the Stanford experience is glean pieces of it that make sense for them. But I don't believe everything we do makes sense for everyone. What we do at Stanford is unique and makes sense for our setting and our issues, but everybody's got a different story to tell.
Thank you. Another question for all three of you. So we'll go again, Sarah, Gary, and Brian. Unlike most large employers, universities have a lot of churn, which meaning students graduating every year with a complete turnover of students every 4 to 6 years. How does this affect your progress, like Stanford's doubling of bike share? What one thing would you recommend to other universities to deal with this churn?
Oh, that's a great question, and that's something that we are challenged with all the time with our continual messaging, getting the word out, particularly at the beginning of the year, even prior to the beginning of the year, to reach incoming freshmen during orientation. I think also, though, what a larger effort that I think that USF really needs to focus on, is instilling in, it's an institutional culture at USF where faculty hold the value of sustainability in high regard, and that they incorporate the values of sustainability in their coursework, so that the ideas of sustainability, as well as for transportation, using commute alternatives, is something that comes up repeatedly, even in their coursework. I think that the problem is kind of out of sight. Here at USF, we're a suburban campus. Many people own cars. Our transit system is relatively weak, and so many people basically rely on driving, and a lot of people don't question that. And so I think that one of the purposes of the university is to start questioning that, and use our coursework, our curricula, to raise those important questions.
So this is Gary. I'm going to go back to sincere relationship building. Cornell University is a very decentralized, I shouldn't make the assumption of every university is very decentralized. Ours is. So it's bridging those gaps and developing relationships across all of the schools, making sure that the messages are done, as Sarah said, before people even start to come to campus. Tabling might be old-fashioned, but it does work. So that sincere relationship building, so people have an understanding what TDM is. People have an understanding of why that's important and why you don't want to build more parking, because it is expensive. And would you rather have tuition raised? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you want to make sure in my opinion, you bring economics into the conversation on a regular basis, and people that's what I tend to do, and just keep that message simple. But I do it I can't even count the amount of across campus. And on my lunch hour, I do a brown bag walk talk with about every single department, whether it's a custodian or whether it's a dean. We all put their pants on the same way, but making sure they understand our message, because as most transportation departments at the university level are auxiliary, and they're not part of the academic setting. So what we try to do is engage students, engage faculty, engage staff. We have shared governance. Make sure that we are a presence in the employee assembly. We are a presence in the university assembly. We have a presence in the graduate, student, and professional assembly. We have a presence in the student assembly. I mean, to make sure that just because we're an auxiliary unit and we're not part of the academic, we want to make sure we are always included in the academic mission. Just this past May, we're part of something called the Green Revolving Fund. So I think there is some effort that is continuing. I've seen it with other peer institutions where more sustainability and transportation is being incorporated within the curriculum, which is great. I'm done.
At Stanford, we've been doing this stuff for so long, it's really part of our culture, and it's part of the Stanford experience. I'll just give a quick little anecdote. So everybody knows about the Stanford band. It's a little irreverent, gets into trouble sometimes. At a football game that I was at a year or two ago, they had one of their skits involve the Marguerite bus. And they had created a crazy-looking skit with the bus and the bus driving around. And I'm not sure what the bus was doing, but it was there on the field with the band. So, arguably, transportation programs, TDM, all of that really has been ingrained into the culture at Stanford, and it's an accepted aspect of being a cardinal. So that work, I'm fortunate, has already been done by predecessors, and the necessity that the GUP brings to the campus. So we continue to do promotions and marketing, the orientations that we're heavily involved in, things, similar things that Gary talked about. But the groundwork for us is already there. The land has been cleared and it's relatively fertile. So for us, it's a matter of doing our jobs well and consistently and continuing to innovate. And that's how we do it.
Thank you so much to the three presenters. We're actually a little bit over time, so I won't keep our attendees longer, but we have a few more questions that we did not get to, so I'll make sure that we will send those answers in writing together with the recording of today's webinar and the slides. I encourage everyone, if you still have questions, to either email them to webinars@aashe.org or to the panelists, and I'm sure they'll be happy to get in touch with you. One friendly reminder, our next webinar will take place next week. It will explore how to teach climate change by creating an Earth community where all students are intellectually and emotionally engaged. For more information on our webinars and workshops and the conference in October, please visit our website. Thank you so much to all the panelists for your presentations and a very engaging discussion. And thank you to everyone for attending. Have a good day, everyone.